I'd like to start by acknowledging Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples throughout Australia as the traditional custodians of our country. I pay my respect to their elders past, present and emerging. Specifically, I'd like to acknowledge that we are on Gadigal people of the Eora Nation as the guardians of the country where we are meeting here today. I'd also like to recognise that we've had two welcomes to country, one from Uncle Alan last night and one from Brendan today, and I thank them. I'd also like to acknowledge that I also like to acknowledge that Wiradjuri artist Jordana Angus, who designed this map of Australia with reference to the 17 United Nations Global Sustainable Development Goals adopted by Australia for achieving sustainability. The partnership SDG forms the western boundary and governance is on the eastern side, thereby appearing to hold all the other SDGs firmly aligned and together. That's important for our talk today. Partnerships and governance are the bookends that have underpinned the success of the bushfire recovery program that Landcare and other environmental groups has very successfully implemented in burnt areas in the devastated from the devastated bushfires of 2019-20. Now, I'm Maxine Cooper. I have the pleasure of being the co-chair of the Landcare-led Bushfire Recovery Grants Program Management Committee. I'm also Deputy Chair of NLN and Chair of Landcare ACT, which for today's purpose is one of the program delivery partners. I'll briefly outline the program's establishment, the importance of the partnerships and governance arrangements for the Program Management Committee. Then Rowan, our wonderful Bushfire Recovery Program Manager, who has been so committed and so competent to make the program the success it is, will talk about the program in the way it's been delivered. Following Rowan, Thurlow Gurin, our CEO of Landcare New South Wales, will share his perspective from a partner's viewpoint. Finally, Rowan will outline what the program has achieved and wrap up. Oh, wrong way, sorry. Okay, the 2019-20 bushfires were at a landscape scale that could be seen from outer space. They were felt far from the actual fire ground. Urban residents hundreds of kilometres away donned masks to protect their health, and Parliament House was closed due to dense smoke inside it. The fires became very personal for us all and to many, many people who weren't on the fire ground. This is the context that just prior to Christmas 2020 prompted the CEO of the National Landcare Network, Jim, who I see sitting down the front, and our CEO of Landcare Australia, and a few others of us, board members, we got together to discuss how the two organisations might partner to source Commonwealth funding to focus on the recovery efforts that were obviously inevitable. The National Landcare Network and Landcare Australia co-designed the recovery program. The program has many, many partnerships involving state and territory bodies, on-ground local carers and other groups, and the Commonwealth Government, who provided $14 million to fund the project. When funding was secured in 2021, the Landcare movement was, and I think this is incredibly important, we were there ready, willing and able to deliver, because Landcare groups and networks have a proven history of delivering bushfire recovery actions, and there is a well-established national network that can be quickly mobilised at landscape scales for landscape scale project delivery. Indeed, many Landcare groups and networks embedded in the affected communities had already begun actively responding and trying to recover. The governance, roles and membership for the Program Management Committee are shown on the image. The committee initially met weekly and since then has met on an ongoing needs basis. The chair rotates between myself and a Landcare Australia director. And if there is an issue, we usually work it out outside meetings with our CEOs to clarify and resolve. A standing item on the agenda has been to check on the health of our partnership. The government department, which today I think Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry, administer the grant funding. And they are an observer and an advisor at all our meetings. And we've been most fortunate in the way we work that agreement has always been achieved by consensus. I'm now going to hand you over to Rowan, who will outline exactly the details of delivery. Thank you.
Thank you, Maxine, and good morning, everyone, including everyone online who's attending today. I'd like to thank you for your patience as we switch between the speakers during this presentation. It's a true partnership in action there where we're all trying to represent the partnership as a whole that's delivered this program. Beyond the structural and governance elements that Maxine described, this program has been truly an example of Landcare responding to the challenges and working together in partnership at all levels. This flowchart here behind me is a snapshot of some of the partner organisations and processes involved in developing the Landcare-led Bushfire Recovery Grants program from the ground up, with multiple delivery partners across 5 states and territories. Through regular meetings, delivery partner staff were quickly mobilised to contribute to program guideline development, grant marking processes, and streamlining media and communications across regions and states. This quick work meant that we were able to position ourselves to best support bushfire-affected communities through a less than ideal application and a delivery period, something I'll talk a bit more on later. Delivery of the grants program was divided into 2 teams, both supported by staff from each of the national Landcare organisations and the 5 participating states and territories organisations. One of the program's key successes and its point of difference was the facilitation of an applicant support team. Centrally coordinated, each state and territory had dedicated staff responsible for supporting bushfire-affected groups throughout the program area. These activities they undertook included running regional partnership and application workshops, one-on-one grant writing support, through to helping successful projects with administration, delivery and reporting. The role of the applicant support team in supporting communities in disaster recovery is a vital one. Projects consistently reported back how much they appreciated having a key program contact to call up to help navigate grant administration, but also delivery through all of the challenges we faced in the past 12 months, including the Omicron variant on top of normal COVID challenges and also the flooding, obviously, since last year throughout the eastern states. We also can't underestimate the need and value of coordinated media and communications. With so many partners involved, ensuring consistent messaging and sharing success stories to a wide audience, from local to state-based to national and even international media. I've talked a little bit about the structure of the program, but I wanted to share this map with you to really demonstrate the program's reach across bushfire-affected regions. You can see there are a few different colours, and there's red, which is the extent of the Black Summer Bushfires there as well. Noting these are federally declared regions, which did not include significant fires in the Cuddly Creek area of South Australia, and also the Great Western Woodlands of Western Australia, where over 500,000 hectares were burnt in those fires. In spite of incredibly short timeframes, through targeted communication and support, over 200 applications were received with a combined funding request of $21.5 million. Communities need this funding, and they still do. Of these applications, we were only able to fund 111 of them. And the projects weren't limited to Landcare groups, it's important to note. First Nations, environmental not-for-profits, and researchers were also funded through the program. This is an active demonstration of Landcare partnerships at work. To give you a closer look at the workings of delivering the partnership program, I'll pass you on to Turlo, who's the CEO of Landcare New South Wales.
Thank you very much, Maxine and Rowan. I just think this whole program has been a fantastic example of Landcare working together at every level. And anyone who's been involved with the program, this project, will know what I mean by that. And that's not something that I say glibly, because it's hard. It's hard work. 54 of the projects that Rowan talked about. I'm going to run through a few statistics around New South Wales. 54 of them were managed in New South Wales, and I want to give a big shout out to Katie Caldwell, who's here. If you could stand up, Katie, who's been leading the charge in New South Wales. Yeah. So it takes a lot of coordination. I think Rowan put his finger on it. Without that sort of coordinated management across the different levels and layers within Landcare, it's really hard. It just makes it that much harder for the Landcare groups to actively get involved, or indeed other non-Landcare groups to participate. There's a couple of things I just want to share with you in addition to some of those numbers. I think it's worth thinking about the impact. So I had 111 projects. Almost half of them were in New South Wales fire-affected areas. And it's worth noting that, we had 1,700 volunteers engaged in on-the-ground projects to do with Landcare recovery, Landcare-led bushfire recovery. I think it's amazing. And if you want some other interesting stats, 750 community days of volunteer involvement. Now, I don't know whether community days is a unit that's recognised scientifically, but I reckon it's fantastic. I love it, and I'm going to use it. Hope that's okay, Rowan. And some of the other things, 57,000 plants were established, again, in the New South Wales projects, almost 1,000 nest boxes. I could go on and on. 47 of the 54 projects led to a positive terrestrial biodiversity impact. That's really important. I've got 2 minutes. So what I'd say, what's it meant for us? In a nutshell, Landcare is people care. That's what we're about. The applicant support role was resourced, and it helped give us the reach. It helped the funding body get the reach, and our Land and Landcare Australia. So that role was pivotal in delivery. And I think it's just an excellent, like I said before, an excellent example of how we've worked together. There's a fantastic case study here, which I won't have time to go into today from Richmond Landcare. But there's a fantastic quote here, which I'll leave with you. But in a nutshell, the project has allowed community capacity building. And as we know, that's the wonderful work that Landcare does. And by having a program like this, we can get that kind of capacity building in all kinds of contexts, whether it be from a fire restoration, whether it be from flooding. And the last thing I would say is that you've all heard about the Royal Commission into disasters that came, on the fires from 19 and 20. Katie and I have had a look through the findings and recommendations. There's about 6 findings that spoke to community involvement in building resilience. That's just a check against what we're doing here in this program and what you're doing in Landcare. So I think that's really important. Have a look at the findings. And there's one recommendation, 10.1, which is worth reading. It's really short, and it says, this is under disaster education for individuals and communities. This is recommendation 10.1. State and territory governments should continue to deliver, evaluate and improve education and engagement programs aimed at promoting disaster resilience for individuals and communities. This is exactly what we've done. And it's what we're going to keep doing because that's what Landcare does. And I'd also say is that in terms of that capacity building, Katie Caldwell in our team will be leading a program called our Landcare-led resilience program, and please reach out to us to see whether you want to get involved in that. We'd love to talk with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Telo. Since it started last year, I've spent much of my time apologising for this program. $14 million of public funds towards community-led environmental recovery is not an insignificant program, but this funding did come with a number of limitations. This presentation is not about demonstrating the perfect, ideal post-disaster grants round, but about how Landcare partnerships at all levels can work together to quickly mobilise and deliver significant outcomes across broad landscapes in spite of the challenges put before them. We know communities don't want short-term funding, onerous reporting and complicated forms. Community-led recovery needs time, funding and dedicated support, not over 1 year, but over 5, 10 or 15 years. More time would allow for greater, considered local and regional partnerships to form and allow First Nations-led aspirations for country to come to the fore where they belong. In spite of the limitations and the challenges faced by groups over the past 2 years, Landcare-led partnerships have delivered. Over 15,000 people have been involved. Almost 75,000 volunteer hours have contributed to this program. Over 3,100 nest boxes installed and over 1,100 workshops, field days and events through the program. This graph here is to show the reach of Landcare partnerships. On average, each project has included 3 or 4 partner organisations. From other community groups, First Nations organisations, councils, fire and other government organisations, researchers and schools. Landcare are on the ground, in community, working in partnerships with anyone and everyone to get the job done. This isn't just about environmental recovery, but community healing. Working and bringing people together on positive projects lift people and community spirits as well. This program shows what can be achieved with proper funding and resources to support Landcare partnerships at all levels. With strong governance, multi-level facilitated support, cross-regional delivery challenges, Landcare is alive and ready to mobilise. And there is an ongoing demand. $14 million was great, it was a great first start, but there remains a massive ongoing need for support and programs like this to help Landcare right across the country. Landcare is best placed to deliver. Locals defending houses and then the very next day checking on their neighbours, on the ground and ready for the long recovery process. Next time, it's better to engage with Landcare early. Involve Landcare in program design to quickly and more effectively support those communities in need. And Landcare partnerships can achieve the same for flood recovery and, importantly, disaster preparedness and resilience like Turlo was speaking to. We need so much more in the face of a changing climate. And now we're over to questions.
I think we've only got time for maybe one question.
One question, okay.
Did Landcare have much to do with disaster? Has Landcare got a formal partnership with Resilience New South Wales or whatever that government department is that they're about to restructure?
We do.
The short answer is yes, but perhaps I'll pass you to Turlo to answer that on the mic, if that's okay.
Yeah, happy to chat later. We've just got a project with them where we're helping them sort of with reach, working together with some of the emergency agencies. So yeah, please reach out. Landcare New South Wales.
Thank you. Time for one more if there's any. Up the back.
So are you saying that the model of co-design and co-delivery funding, that it will not be continued in the future, that it will be directly with Landcare Group?
So just for the viewers online, we'll actually have to use the mic to bring the sound through.
Okay, sorry. Yes, so does that mean that last slide you're talking about, you need to engage with Landcare groups earlier and directly? Does that mean that this current model, the past model of co-design and co-delivery, will that not be the case in the future? Will it actually be directly with Landcare groups?
That's what we'd like it to be, absolutely. I mean, that's how it works best, there's no question.
Great, thank you.
That might be time. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Louise Duxbury, and I'm a board member on the National Landcare Network, so I can attest to the fact that this has been a most fantastic collaboration, and it was a collaborative presentation, so wasn't that really totally appropriate? So let's just give them applause for being part of that great partnership. We've now got just 4 minutes for people to swap to another session if that's what they want to do, and we're starting again with the next presentation here in 3 more minutes.